Are you an engineer and you're having a hard time dealing with all the stress and conflict at work? Or you need to have a difficult conversation with a coworker or your supervisor and you aren't sure how to approach it? Whether it's talking with a coworker about your different work styles or asking your boss for a raise? Well, by the end of this video, I'm going to show you a step-by-step system to help you manage stress and conflict effectively so you can go into work confidently, knowing that you can handle stress or whatever challenges you face during the day. And if you're feeling burned out from all this stress and you sometimes backing down when there's a conflict and you want practical skills to help you overcome these obstacles, well, that's exactly what I'm going to show you today in my system. My name is John Murphy. I've been coaching for over 7 years. I've coached hundreds of people and I've helped many engineers develop the skills that they need to deal with stress and conflict effectively. My background is in structural engineering. So I used to sit in a cubicle doing calculations for 8 hours a day or more. I was shy, quiet, I was afraid to speak up or take on a leadership role. And my desk was in between these two people that just hated each other. They would whisper to me how much they hated the other person when the other one wasn't looking, but they never talked with each other. I felt stressed out all the time. I felt like I was in the middle of a war zone, and I just didn't know how to handle it. I was afraid to speak up or change anything. I wanted to show leadership and make a difference in the office, but I just didn't know how. And one day I got fed up with waiting for things to change, and I decided to make a change. I signed up for my first leadership training. I was really nervous and I didn't know what to expect. You know, these things can sometimes be a little goofy. But one of the first things that I learned that was really valuable was how we sometimes put ourselves into boxes and we limit our own potential. I learned I'd put myself in a box with my title as an engineer. I believed all the stereotypes about engineers being quiet, shy, unable to take on a leadership role, just do calculations, stay in the background. I believed all these things about myself. But what I found out is when you're looking really carefully, you can usually find evidence that contradicts some of your long-held beliefs about yourself or other people. You can also find evidence to support a completely new judgment about yourself or other people. And one piece of evidence that I noticed right away was one of the most outspoken and charismatic people in the leadership seminar was an engineer. Realizing this was really empowering, and it started to help me question some of my assumptions about engineers in general and my judgments about myself. And once I broke out of this box that I'd been putting myself in, I was able to take new actions I'd never taken before. One of the things I did was I stood up one day in my office and I said to both people sitting next to me, "I'd like to request a meeting." It took a huge amount of courage for me to speak those words. I called the meeting and I asked them why they weren't talking to one another. They started to talk and express their opinions. It's the first time they talked to each other in months. And it didn't work out perfectly, but I had taken some bold action for maybe the first time in my life. And I was no longer restrained by the judgments that I'd made about myself. And from that time forward, I've dedicated myself to improving the work environment for engineers and helping them overcome their own personal obstacles. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my system. I like to use the metaphor of a building. There are 3 main elements of this building. The foundation, where you build a strong foundation of internal strength. The second element is reinforcement for that foundation. This is about reinforcing your internal strength so you can handle stress more effectively. And finally, the third step is about building a connected framework. This is about communicating with the people on your team and creating a connected framework with all the members of your team. I've used this system to help many engineers build self-confidence that they need to have difficult conversations and to manage the stress along the way. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail into each step. Again, the first element is the foundation. You need to build that strong foundation of internal strength. When you do this, you'll be able to stand your ground when people disagree with you. And you'll understand your values and where you will and will not compromise. And you'll have a clear idea of what outcome you want to produce. So you won't be swayed by the opinions or competing objectives of other people. If you don't do this, you will be swayed easily. You'll lack self-confidence because you won't know where you stand. And you won't progress as quickly because you won't have a clear idea of where you're headed. The actions you need to take for this are to clear your self-critical thoughts, identify your strengths, build your vision of where you want to go, develop a strategy to get there, and take action with accountability. The next element is reinforcement for that foundation. You need to create habits to reduce stress and reinforce your ability to handle stress. The main tool that I use for this is mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness techniques have been scientifically proven to reduce anxiety, significantly improve visual spatial processing, working memory, executive functioning, and also reduce the amount that the brain becomes distracted. If you don't do this, you'll significantly reduce the quality of your work, have long-term impacts on your health, and overall reduce the amount of happiness that you have at your work. The actions you need to take for this step are to use mindfulness practices, develop self-compassion, and restore your energy with rest and play. Finally, the third element is to create a connected framework. You need to create a connected framework with the members of your team. When you have stronger connections with the people on your team, conflicts will resolve much easier. There will be a level of trust and respect that will help the conflicts sometimes resolve themselves. If you don't do this, you won't have as much trust with your fellow team members. If a conflict arises, they'll assume that you're in it for yourself, they may fight against you, and even undermine your objectives. The actions you need to take for this step are to study leadership principles, manage your own ego, listen and understand others, communicate effectively, and use conflict resolution techniques. I offer training and coaching to help you develop all the skills in this system. If you'd like to work with me, there are 2 different ways that you can learn this system. You can do one-on-one coaching, which includes a group training, or you can just do the group training alone. Both programs are 6 months long with trainings every other week, and the one-to-one option is $300 per month for 6 months, and the group training alone is $150 per month for 6 months. With both programs, you're going to get a free emotional intelligence assessment worth over $100, and you'll get a 200-page workbook with skills to help you develop stress management, conflict management, and leadership skills, and this workbook is worth over $200. If you want to talk with me about how this program could work for you, you can book a 10-minute call by clicking the link below.